Good morning, church. Here we are in the fourth Sunday of Advent, the Sunday of Love, and it's just been an amazing season already. We've seen so many wonderful miracles and so many wonderful things, and the story of the Incarnation truly coming to life, and it's exciting to be a part of all this. We are just about to wrap everything up for the season, but we do have Christmas Eve service, 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day we will be having service assuming the weather allows us. They're talking about snow and white Christmases and all this kind of stuff that probably will never happen. But just in case, keep an eye out on Facebook. That's where we'll announce everything. So the Sunday of Love. Love is an amazing thing. It's powerful. And I love my wife, right? But I also love hamburgers. Now, am I using the same word? Of course not. And we know this. We know there's different Greek words for love, and we're talking today about agape love. Yet all those other kind of loves can feel very strong and very real. And we probably use this word love more than any other word in our language or in our days. We love this, we love that. Oh, I love those. Oh, I love those shoes. Oh, I love that store. Oh, man, I love the Falcons. Whatever it may be, we have that word and we throw it around. And yet the Bible tells us, for God so loved the world that he gave his son. And then we see in Luke chapter 2, the birth of Christ, as it's announced by the angels. And it says, we talked last week about the shepherds, it said, so they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in a manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. Prophets have been talking about this for a long, long time. Prophets have been announcing this for a long time. And now we get to see the incarnation, God coming to be with us exactly as he promised. And what is this love? How do we differentiate it between all the other things we love? We can love our church even. We can love our pastors. We can love each other. How do we differentiate all these loves? Well, the case I'm going to make today, the point I'm going to make today, is that the love that God gave us, that love that came from heaven to earth, was very much intended for one thing, to be transformational. It means to be transformed. And God intended for us to become once again like him, have that ability through Jesus to become like him. And it's to transform us from our sinful ways, to transform us from our broken ways, to transform us all the way around. The love that we can tell the difference between God's love is because if it's God's love, it transforms us. If it's just any other kind of love, it's good and it's fine and it's supposed to be there, but it's not always transformative. It may transform us for a moment, but to transform the very core of who we are takes God's love. We can say love is beautiful, it's blind, but love can also be used and misused and abused and taken advantage of and misunderstood and misapplied and misrepresented and sometimes just missed. We are in a broken world, and sometimes we just miss love. And so it needs to be a different kind of love. And even that's our love and God's love. We can miss it, we can misrepresent it, we can do all those things, and it's still love. So we have to get to the core of it and understand that God's trying to do a deeper work here. And there's a reason the enemy's fighting against all of these things, because he wants us not to see the love of Christ the way it's expressed. We've got people who tear down Christianity and tear down the church because the world doesn't want us to see Christ's love. And sometimes the church does a very poor job of representing Christ's love. We just want them to come to church, don't we? We just want them to be in our buildings. And that's not the love of Christ. That may be a form of love, but it's not always transformative, because transformative means we have to take the full love of God through the full measure of his word into our life. God's love is transformational. Where our love can be misrepresented and misused and abused and all those things, his love is clear, perfect, all-seeing, all-encompassing, all-knowing, always available, ever-present, and life-changing. It is everything we need for life. His love is transformative. His love transforms us at the very core of our being if we allow it. God's love, listen, I don't want to make it all sound like doilies and flowers here, Because God's love is also dangerous, and it's scary, and it's hard, and it's difficult, and it can be intimidating, and it sometimes can be confusing because we don't always see what He's doing, but that's the point. He's transforming us. If we could see it, we wouldn't need transforming. And so God's love can sometimes come across as difficult because we don't understand it all. But He loves us enough to give it anyway. He loves us enough to keep pushing that love. And when Christ came into the world through the incarnation, this is not the way the prophets thought it would happen. This is not the way anybody thought it would happen. This is not the way Messiah is to come into the world. This certainly is not how God's going to save us. But God loved us so much that He thought through all those things and came to us in the love of Christ, in the love of God, in the most perfect way. And it transformed the world. And it's still transforming lives. And it's still continuing to transform us. And it can transform you, and it can transform me today. Every time we come into His presence, we should be transformed into some level. Love can do all these things, and it's an amazing thing. Love, and done right, can affirm, it can comfort, it can encourage. It can be that thing that builds us up. It softens a blow. It can weep with us. It can sit with us. It can grieve with us. It can feed us. It can hug us. Love can do all these things. But if this is all we allow it to do, then we miss the point, once again, of the incarnation. If all we let love do is be that thing that happens to us from time to time when we need it, we miss the point of incarnation. Love transforms us. Now, He uses these things. These things are important. These things are a vital part of it. But it's through the love of Christ, through the actions of you and me as Christians, and it's through the love of Christ, through His Word and through His testimony of His Word and the witness of the saints, that we get to see transformation. It's when someone receives that and accepts that, they are transformed. We try to make the world better through legislation and campaigns and marches and giving to causes, and we get frustrated and we get tired of that. We cry for justice, but we only get so far. We cry for an end to oppression, but we only get so far because those things in and of themselves, as much as they may be birthed out of love on one hand, are not enough in themselves. We must have the love of Christ to transform us in those moments. It's the only thing that will change a heart. The only thing that will change a motivation. The only thing that will change a mind is the love of Christ. It transforms us, and that's what the incarnation was meant to do, to change us from sinners into saints, to change us from our old ways into the new ways, from the world into the Spirit, to transform us, to have the mind of Christ, to think like Him. Jesus came that we might be born again, made new, created again, made into new creations, changed at the very core and the essence of who we are and what we are. He came as a baby in a manger and loved us enough to bring Himself into our world so that we could not ever be the same again, but be transformed by His very presence. His presence comes to us through the Word. His presence comes to us through worship. His presence comes to us through internet. His presence can come to us any way He wants to. But when He comes, His intention is to transform, not to make you feel better, not to give you a warm fuzzy. All that's just secondary. He comes to transform you. Every time you pick up the Word, He means for you to be transformed. Every time you pray, He means for you to be transformed. Every time you witness, every time you serve, every time you use your gifts, He intends for you to be transformed. And we know a lot of people who go to church and call themselves Christians, and we know for a fact they all haven't been transformed. We can look at the fruit, can't we? We know people who go to church, have been going to church for years, who say, yeah, I'm a Christian. And they might mark on their political poll, I'm a Christian, I'll vote that way, and all these things. But we see these people still cheat. We see these people still hate. We see these people love things more than they love God. We see these same people who are still racist and sexist and all the other ists. We haven't seen that transformation in the church in our modern times as much as we'd like to, have we? Because we've confused church and becoming a church member with being transformed. It is not even close. It's not even close. If you're not different radically different than you were before you knew Christ, then you may want to think about, have you really met Him? Are you really giving your life to Him? Have you truly been transformed? Do you think about the things of God throughout your day? Do you think about the things that He's trying to do in your life? Those are the things that are transformative. Have our thoughts changed? Have our motives changed? Has our heart changed? And if it has, do we see people differently? Do we not have the same hardness in us that we had before? The love of Christ, the love God intended to come into this world through His child that night, is transformative. And it's meant to transform us. Church doesn't transform us, does it? Going to a Sunday school class doesn't transform us necessarily in and of itself. And yet we've hoped that it would. We've hoped that the church would be enough. And yet we watch church after church after church dying off, fading away, because they haven't been transformed. They're doing good stuff. Their intentions are good. They're trying. They're doing their best. And some people who are in those little churches are really saints of God trying their best. But have we let Christ transform us? Have we seen the things He needs us to see as a church? Have we seen our communities the way He needs us to see our communities? I know churches that still close their doors and move away rather than meet their community that looks different than them. You see the difference? We're called to be not only transformed, but to be transformers through the love of Christ. Love transforms. The love of a father sending a son into a world that's broken and dangerous, into the most vulnerable of circumstances and situations, a place where it was almost impossible for him to make it and survive. Everything was stacked against him. And yet He loved us enough to send His son into that moment. Can you imagine sending your child into something like that? Can you imagine, as much as we see our children go through, putting them in a situation like that? God loved you and me that much. And He loved us enough to transform us. He loved us enough to make us new through this baby born in a manger thousands of years ago, so that we could know the love of Christ, so that we could know what it is to be transformed. Brother and sister, if you're watching this and you don't know that you've been transformed, you're not sure that you've let Christ do that. You've been a good church member. You've been a good version of Christianity as far as you know it, but you've not let or felt the love of God transform you, to change how you see others, to change how you see the world, to transform you out of places in your heart that love other things more than God, or to see others as less than yourself. If you've not been transformed like that, I want to invite you today into that transformative work that God calls us to do. And all you have to do to get that is to invite Him in. All you have to do is say, God, come change me. Be Lord of my life. Take over. Make me new. Let me be born again. Born again is not a slight change. Born again is a complete different makeover. And if that's what you want this morning, if that's not what you've experienced, I don't care if you've been doing this 60 years. If you've not experienced that, today you can. Here's your Christmas gift. Let the Christ child into your life and be transformed into the likeness of God. It's as simple as this. Praying this prayer. God, come into my heart. Forgive my sins and transform my heart. May my whole life be turned over to you. And may I be born again in your Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. It's as simple as that prayer. And if you mean it, God will radically transform you. You will see different. You will hear different. You will believe differently. You will know differently. You will learn differently. Everything is different when we've been transformed by Christ. So I invite you today, if you've been transformed, to celebrate it. If you're looking to be transformed, accept it. If you've just been transformed, rejoice in it. But let this Christmas season not go by without understanding the love of Christ for you. It transforms and changes everything. May the peace of Christ be with you as you walk in this love. And we'll see you at Christmas.